Hello, welcome everyone. We're still letting few participants in. All right, we will give one more minute. We already have 25 participants joining and more coming. Hello, hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are based. You are very welcome to our second webinar on the Humanitarian Peace Development Nexus Learning Series. We already have 33 participants who joined us, and we see that more are coming. So while we wait more people to join, I'd like to extend my warm welcome to everyone. So exciting to see many participants. I see names from many places around the globe, so this is great. And it's also great to see that so many of you are turning out to our second session, which is a proof of sustained interest on the topic and willingness to continue exchanging within the Alliance about the Humanitarian Development Peace Nexus. And today we're going to speak about the concrete application of Nexus approaches on food system transformations. Now, I'm Caterina La Rosa. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Emergency and Operations Lead at the Alliance Hub. And today there's other colleagues of the Hub that are with us in the call. You will see them later during the breakout rooms discussion. So before we enter into today's session, I'd like to share a few words about this event and the background of it. So our journey within the Alliance to explore the potentials and pitfalls of Nexus isn't new. At our latest annual general meeting, we recognized the need for more cross-network exchange, sharing practices, best practices, lessons learned, and we aim to enhance our collective understanding of the Nexus and how to effectively implement it. So this event is part of this collective effort. We would like to thank the Country Leads Group, which is the implementation group of the Alliance structure that took the initiative of this event. And just to remember, this is one of 3 events. One that happened last month that was about Nexus and climate resilience, the current one about food system transformation, and the next one planned for the 11th of December on civil society partnership and its application on Nexus. So as I said, the webinar is meant to inspire the practice of our work, to connect also colleagues across our membership, to develop our collective understanding on approaches, and also build a stronger advocacy that responds to issues that are identified on the ground. So as we delve into today's session, I encourage you to fully engage, share your insights, and participate actively to the discussions that will follow the presentations that we will have in a minute. I hope you enjoyed this session and continue to find value in our joint learnings. And with this, I will give the floor to my co-host, Chris Connelly, who's joining us from Malawi. He is the Program Development and Knowledge Coordinator at Concern Worldwide. Chris, over to you. And you're muted, the usual.
With technology issues. So hi everyone, welcome very much to the session. It's great to have everyone here and having a big turnout as well. It's a real mix of people, so we'd like to also have a chance for everyone to introduce each other. And that would be great if people could start by, oh dear, have I frozen?
We can hear you well.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we could. Okay, now he's frozen, but maybe I can take over. So we would like you to introduce briefly on the chat. So if you could please write on the chat your name and your role, your organization, where you are based, and if you can, what brings you to this meeting. So we will have a few minutes so that you write on the chat, take your time. Let me repeat in case you just joined. I know that still few are joining now. So please write your name, your role, your organization, your location, and what brings you to this meeting. Thank you. I see already a few of you responding. Meanwhile, I would like to remind you that you can activate the closed caption function in case you wish to have subtitles to what we are saying. So welcome Asefa, Debebe, Jameson. We have colleagues from Ethiopia, from Niger. Someone else from Niger. Well, obviously today, one of the presenters is from there, so we may have a good representation from that country. We also have colleagues joining us from South Sudan, head of project. The Ethiopia Deputy CD for WHH in Tiringo, welcome. Hello, Sarah Worku, Alliance Coordinator in Ethiopia. Owen, Senior Advisor, Conflict Transformation. You're very welcome to our conversation. Hello to Barbara Dietrich. She's a representative of the operations group from Helvetas. Lisa joining us from Niger, WHH. Hello, everyone. Okay, so I wonder if we have Chris back. I'm afraid that his connection didn't allow him to stay on the call. Anyways, as he joins us back, let me give you an overview of what will happen today. So today we will explore two real-life context-specific examples of the implementation of humanitarian development peace nexus approaches. These two examples are from Niger and from Ethiopia. And the two speakers who will guide us through this journey are Jameson Gatsirai, joining us from Ethiopia. He is the head of programs for WHH, and Meron Wubishet, who joins us from Ethiopia and is the programs director for Helvetas. So the event will feature two consecutive presentations, each of them lasting approximately 12 minutes. After these presentations, participants will engage in discussion within two separate breakout rooms with one of the two presenters. each participant will have the possibility to choose which discussion you want to join. And after that, we will be back in the plenary. We will hear a few words from the presenters, and that will be the end of our meeting. During the presentations, we will not take questions in plenary, but you are very welcome to share your questions on the chat. And when we will move to the breakout rooms, we will start the conversation from those questions. So please feel free to type your questions. And another thing is that we know that there are quite a few French-speaking colleagues joining us today. If you feel more comfortable in typing your questions in French, be welcome. You can do that. And most of us can understand both languages, so feel free. With this introduction, and hoping that there's no questions, and please, if you do have, feel free to type them on the chat. We will respond to those. I would like to introduce you to the first speaker, Meron. Meron is a development practitioner with more than 16 years of experience in program development and management in partnership, meal, and senior leadership positions. Before joining Helvetas as program director for resilience and access in June 2023, she served as head of program at PIN, so she's really an alliance champion. She holds a master's in social work and a degree in sociology. Meron, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Caterina. So honored to share the experience of Helvetas with regards to our Semi-Gondar resilience project. Next slide. So just to give you a background or the context of Ethiopia and North Gondar, Ethiopia is the second most populous country in Africa with over 115 million people, and Ethiopia's agriculture, especially agriculture, is the backbone of Ethiopia's economy, and it's heavily dependent on localized rain-fed subsistence production, and is vulnerable to environmental degradation, shocks, and stress. It's a sad truth, but still Ethiopia is not on track to achieve the UN sustainable goals by 2030, with the poverty and hunger levels projected to be higher in 2030 than they are today. This is being made worse by the conflict in Tigray, swarms of desert locusts, and economic slowdowns, skyrocketing food, fertilizer, and energy prices, and also climate change. So the North Gondar zone is the home to a large population living on the rolling hills leading to the famous Ethiopian heritage Samin Mountains. The zone is one of the poorest and the most vulnerable areas of the country, with higher levels of chronic malnutrition and poor health status. Most households have a limited asset base and are affected by frequent and recurrent disasters and worsened by climate change. Farming is also difficult due to the increasingly unreliable rainfall and rising temperatures. The sloping lands are vulnerable to soil erosion, worsened by open grazing and deforestation. The recent conflict in Tigray further undermined development efforts by deflecting resources away from the area, rendering some areas inaccessible and causing an influx of internally displaced persons to the main town, Tabark. So fortunately, this crisis has now passed, but another internal conflict is ongoing. So it is in this context of high pressure on natural resources and conflict that we implement the Semi-Gondar resilience project. Next slide. So the Semi-Gondar resilience project began in March 21st as a first two-year phase of what we conceive to be a project of longer time scale. It's funded by Australian Development Agency and also partly by a private foundation through Helvetas. The project is implemented by Helvetas and Concern worldwide in partnership with the zonal administration of North Gondar zone. So the overall aim of the project is to strengthen household and community resilience to climate change through the 4 interlinked outcomes. The first one is focusing more improving the management of natural resources. So we use a watershed approach and try to support watershed cooperatives and the government to engage in the preserving the environment, and also improved market opportunities within and across livelihood zones. That's the access to market. So we collaborate or support cooperative unions, primary cooperatives, farmers, and we also aim to strengthen systems for an improved human condition. As I mentioned earlier, the area is highly affected by malnutrition, so there's a health and nutrition component, and strengthening institutions for improved governance and accountability. This is where we also collaborate with different government stakeholders and build their capacities so that they are able to execute their roles. So these outcomes were expected to operate synergically to bring about system level change in all activities. A strong focus, of course, was given to women in disadvantaged groups. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, the project implementation was interrupted early on because of the conflict in the north, and we have to decide to focus on selected areas where many IDPs were concentrated. That's the town, the Barg town, which leads us to the agreement of realignment of the budget to accommodate a 5th project objective. Next. And next and next. So a 5th objective, mitigating the effects of man-made and natural emergencies. No, the previous slide, sorry. So where like we try to have the humanitarian response come in, and also the peace through the community-led crisis response approach. I will go into the details in the later slides. So when we look into the project, its contribution to the ongoing discussion with regards to food systems, the project contributes to the Ethiopian food systems pathway commitment, because we are again focusing on resilient, sustainable, and inclusive food systems to ensure positive social, economic, and environmental outcomes. All these little circles that you see on the slide are somehow addressed in the project. So in Ethiopia, through Alliance 2015, we have been engaged in the development of the Ethiopian food systems conceptual framework. So based on during this process, based on the identified key challenges, 20 game-changing ideas were selected, and from these game-changing ideas, they were categorized into 6 clusters. So as you see in the slide, cluster 1, cluster 3, cluster 5, and 6, where food availability, accessibility, integrated policy system to promote agricultural transformation, access to markets, and managing and mainstreaming risk and protecting the poor. These components are already incorporated or addressed, tried to be addressed in the project, even though the food system is a new thing in Ethiopia. Next slide. So what is the Nexus component within the project? So let's unpack a bit the different components that we have been doing in the project. So with regards to development, we were focusing more on the management of natural resource, landscape management, early warning response, building capacities to early warning response, the improving access to markets in the targeted livelihood zones, and the nutrition component was also managed by Concern, the women empowerment, and also building the capacity of civil society organizations, especially the government, was among the key development components. We use this through use of blocked grants, capacity building trainings, and also capacitating the watershed cooperatives. The humanitarian wing is, as I mentioned earlier, it's adaptation from the previous, from the crisis. So we use the community-led response to crisis approach, where we provide a micro micro grants to increase, to engage the community to respond to their needs. So basically the objective is to increase the scale, the impact, and momentum of crisis-affected people's own initiatives to help each other to survive with dignity, strengthen communal well-being, and start addressing root cause of vulnerability. So it's more of a participatory way of responding to crisis, which we have really found interesting results. And also we included conditional and unconditional cash transfer. The peace component, well, throughout our program implementation in North Gondar, the conflict sensitive program management was also used, where we do situation analysis. We try to look into the developments, and by all means, thanks to also our donor flexibility, we adapt to the current situation and try to look into the trends in the area. So as part of this community-led response to crisis, we were able to also focus on the peace part, where we engage the key peace actors, religious leaders, community-based organizations, and we build the capacities to have the understanding on the importance of peaceful coexistence, because there was a tension over resources due to the IDP's caseload. So we, through the project, an effort was also made to advocate on the coexistence between the hosts, the importance of the coexistence between the host communities and IDPs. Of course, always mainstreaming the peace component is difficult, but we tried at least to use a community-led approach to mainstream it throughout the implementation. So what are the challenges? Conflict and instability was the key challenge, especially it was difficult to access the project sites, which also contributes for a delay in implementation. As you noticed, we started in 2021, but we were forced to reduce the duration of the project implementation. Of course, we are lucky because we are currently developing the second phase of the project, but hadn't we have this opportunity, it would have been difficult even to continue to implement in this very fragile area. Many actors involved in Nexus programming lack the capacity to implement complex and integrated programs. This is one key challenge we faced, because again, we need to adapt the Nexus programming thinking, needs to be there. So in some cases, key stakeholders want us to fully shift into humanitarian response, but still we need to mainstream the Nexus approach. So this was a challenge, which leads us to lack of coordination between different actors to implement this Nexus programming. When you look into other challenges, the conventional project approach always comes the first, because we are trying to have the systems thinking, especially working with the seeds, introducing different seed varieties, nutrition dense crops and the like with cooperative unions, but still the conventional way of direct free distributions, some organizations are doing. So we are trying to implement through cooperative unions and not to distort the seed system. So this was a challenge that we had to deal with. Lack of coordination of actors. This is also a common challenge we face in Ethiopia, and the price inflation and also difficulty to attract the private sector was also another challenge. Next. So the success, well, as the project, as we implemented around Samin Mountains, the soil water conservation activities, we see promising results, and also a large scale production of various seeds, because again, as part of promoting different nutritious dense seed varieties, we collaborate with Agriculture Research Center. So we really find a promising results in the area. especially faba beans. It was affected by disease previously, but we introduced a new disease-resistant variety in collaboration with a research institute. So this was accepted and it increased the production and productivity. The other is a Nexus programming. I mean, reaching large number of host community and IDP through the community-led emergency response was a success and highly appreciated, accepted by stakeholders, because as NGO, we are expected to respond. And if there is no crisis modifier, if there is no flexibility to adapt our programming and respond to the needs, it would really be difficult. So I think we were successful through using this community-led crisis emergency response approach and reaching large number of people. The income generating activities through the VSLAs, it was also well appreciated as part of the development intervention and use of crisis modifiers. I mean, I have mentioned it many times. I think it contributed to the success of the project. Next. These are some of the pictures demonstrating the project activities, land management practices, different seed varieties, as I mentioned, which was distributed to the primary cooperatives through the cooperative unions, women groups. This you can see from the slide. Next. Just to demonstrate some of the successes. And in the project, as I mentioned, we are promoting different varieties of seeds. So faba beans was well accepted, and the potato is also Serato. I have another graph to show you, so you will see there the success. Next. Okay, so the graph is not there. So what are the lessons learned? I think that's really important. Well, strengthening the seed system, it enhances access to sustainable quality variety seeds and address seed supply shortage. I think our cooperation with the Gondar Research Institute and also our work with Dabar Cooperative Union, which have primary cooperatives under it, it was really a success, and we encourage all organizations to engage in such a way so that we don't distort the system, but rather strengthen it. And by strengthening effectively the linkage between this research center, the cooperative unions could engage without greater challenge in selected value chains. It could engage farmers without greater challenge in selected value chains, because the farmers, they tend to focus on some production, but like through the cooperatives, they are generating income, and we are again sharing the seeds back to the union. So like this really keeps the system going, in the establishing the linkage was also important. We learned that existing programs can and should be aligned with the Ethiopian Food System National Pathway. Even though the food system transformation is a new initiative in Ethiopia, at least in the previous slide, we tried to reflect that it tries to fit into the initiative. So this is also a learning that we wanted to reflect on. With regards to Nexus, as we say, conflicts have a devastating impact on food systems and food security, because conflicts disrupt production, distribution, access to food, and the like, leading to hunger, malnutrition. So I think crisis modifiers in this case should be considered in any programs, in projects targeting fragile situations, so that we don't, we easily respond, and we minimize the impact on the food systems and food security. We recognize that supporting social groups and community-based organizations with their own ideas, capabilities, and voluntary energy is the most effective, efficient, and fast way to offer help. And we encourage the community-led crisis response as a method to be considered whenever we are planning a Nexus programming. Next. Next. So what are the key advocacy points for EU? I think the first one is large-scale investment in integrated land watershed management with nature-inclusive and climate-smart approach, which has a significant contribution to the Ethiopian food system framework, and also long-term programming, especially to see a bigger impact, to scale up. We need to design projects longer term, and crisis modifiers should be considered as mandatory. And also we encourage EU to prioritize and be flexible for Nexus programming with, of course, we recommend including the community-led humanitarian response or crisis response as an approach to mitigate any community level, to respond to any community level conflicts or crises. So these are the points from my side. Thank you. Over to you, Caterina.
Thanks very much, Meron, for a fascinating presentation, which we'll discuss more in the breakout groups. So we'll move on next to the second presentation. So let me introduce the presenter. We have Jamison Gadzirai from the head of programs in Niger with Weltanga Hilfa. So Jamison has over 18 years of experience in development and humanitarian aid. He's held significant roles in various organizations across Africa, as well as in the Philippines, with a focus on program management, fundraising, and strategic planning. As part of his current role, he leads program coordination and quality control for a Nexus program in Niger. Jamison is actively engaged in advocacy and communication efforts within the National NGO Forum and has contributed to international appeals and food systems initiatives. So Jamison will give us a short presentation on the work that is currently underway in Niger. Thanks, Jamison, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here. We will be talking this afternoon about two projects that are essentially looking at the Nexus approach, one focusing on emergency and humanitarian aid, and then the other project also looking at development and elements to do with social cohesion. The history that we'll be talking about is covering a period from 2020 in January and running all the way through to 2024. The next slide, please, Chris. So the context in the Niger is particularly interesting with the cascade of crises. On the one hand, we are having crises relating to the structure in terms of agricultural production, which has seen populations not having the food security that they would need, and then a series of attacks covering both ends of the country and making the country unstable. For the regions that we'll be looking at, particularly today, Tawa and Tilaberi, you'd find that they are the regions which are bordering 3 other states where there has been incessant military action. And this action has led to a lot of people coming through to Niger's borders, a lot of people being displaced, and also quite a number of people being food insecure. On the other end, the extreme end of to the western side, you have also the crisis coming from the Chad Basin, which has also affected coming straight from neighboring countries of Nigeria. What this has done is it has affected the level of the country's capacity to cope, the population's capacity to meet food needs, and it has continued to increase the number of people who are food insecure. You will note in the presentation that we've talked about alarming figures regarding the number of people who are displaced, and also real fears about how people are going to be passing from the IPC rating of 2 up to 3 because of further conflict, further displacement, and further concerns around climatic change. What has happened as well has been the political instability that is fairly recent in our country, starting towards the end of July, with the coup d'etat that has come through, and the impact, obviously, that it has had in terms of the community's capacity to cope, in terms of also urgent humanitarian need that we need to put in. Let's move to the next slide, please. Faced with this, it is within this context that the two projects that we are talking about have been placed. So these are the projects that are being funded by 2 separate funding streams. On the one hand, we have the humanitarian aid project that is being funded through the German Federal Foreign Office, We are currently in the third phase of programming, and the idea is essentially to see how we can be able to support communities with immediate food needs through humanitarian aid, how we can be able to carry out wash activities, and how we can also be able to cater for nutrition. So these are activities that are first and foremost coming in and then supporting the communities with the objective, as you have seen, to come in and then support the communities as they need. It's part of a program, the humanitarian aid project that we're talking about. It's part of a program that's not only covering the Niger, but it's also covering Mali, and it's also covering Burkina Faso. So first, responding to the immediate needs of the communities, and then supported by that, we are looking at, on the back of this project, we have the project that is being supported through the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, commonly known as BMZ. So this is the development project where essentially our focus is to provide food security and enable communities to adapt to climate change through the support of economic initiatives, and particularly in host communities in Tillaberi and Tawa. Again, the objective behind that is to strengthen the resilience of the vulnerable households. So in a nutshell, the program, the project as it is, combining these two projects, is in mind ensuring that communities that have been affected by the conflicts, by the crisis that I've mentioned, are able to receive immediate aid as they need in the sectors that are important. And these are the sectors of food security, nutrition, as well as wash. And then the same communities are able then to be able to respond to longer term elements relating to their resilience. So how do we work with them around building groups? How do we train them? How do we provide support? And the Nexus project is couched on this. Next slide, please, Chris. So what we have done is essentially we have tried with the two projects to form a story around how communities are able to be strengthened, how communities are able to have their immediate needs met, and how communities can be able to have the social stability that is important so that when other triggers are coming in future, then they can be able to be resilient. So within the development phase, as you can see, our focus is on critical components such as food security, livelihoods, and agriculture, and specifically on livestock. We want to increase agricultural production and diversify it. What we're looking at is also to facilitate producers access to training as well as infrastructure so that they can be able to develop production, and then they can be able to be linked to local markets, and then they can develop the value chain. Our forte has been mainly around systems thinking, around ensuring that we are building up on resilient food systems and transforming them. So on the one hand, through the development phase, we are saying agriculturalists are able to be supported in that regard. But we are not forgetting also the pastoralists, because the main aim of our project is to ensure that there is balance and there is food security and opportunities for both pastoralists as well as agriculturalists. So for the pastoralists, what we're doing under the development is ensuring that we are increasing and improving their knowledge on production techniques. And we're also ensuring that they have also better livestock services. Within the humanitarian aid, which is again, the context in which we're working, what we've been doing is we are ensuring that communities have access to food. Communities have access to better sanitation. Communities, particularly for the vulnerable, who in our view are the pregnant and lactating women, who in our view are also the children who are under 59 months. What we're doing then is to provide support through nutrition supplements. We are also providing elements for prevention, providing nutrition education and ensuring that local households are trained on how they can be able to do the screening process, how they can be able also to be able to refer cases for further treatment and support at local health centers. And on the peace component, which, as I've mentioned, this is where the story comes in, where we are strengthening the social capacity of local communities. What we've been doing is we need to strengthen, first and foremost, the capacity of local communities to peacefully coexist. So what we've done is we've done a diagnostic study, context analysis, finding out what are the uniters, what are the dividers, And from then on, we have been able to create awareness and provide also training to local leaders on good governance. We've been able to strengthen also dialogue and then favor non-violent conflict resolution, because the bulk of the conflict that we are having are the conflicts around resource usage. And what we want to do is to improve on how we can be able to resolve the conflict, and also to strengthen the structures in this regard. So we identify, train, and monitor conflict prevention committees through our partners, and we ensure that that process is worthwhile. That being said, Chris, we go to the challenges. Now, what we've seen, it's not too different from what Meron has been speaking about. We're working in a very volatile area where there's a bulk of insecurity. And what we're seeing is that there's shrinking humanitarian space, which makes it difficult for us to be able to access the local communities which would need to support. And then there's also the political dimension, which I think would need also to be discussed further, especially with the dynamism of the political landscape, where it's becoming more and more difficult for us to work with the state technical partners. And then also the element which is also important for us has been the issue of how we can favor the uptake of our activities with the implementing partners. These are local organizations. Here we're looking at training. We're looking at also ensuring that they are accountable for the resources that they are using. So accountability, compliance, as well as take up and appropriation of activities over and above the life of the actual project. Let's move over to the successes. In terms of success, 3 years is a long time. We've been going on to 4 now. We are seeing that the local communities, the participants, are taking up the activities as their own. It's something that is becoming local talk around peace building, local talk around the infrastructure that we've developed. There is also a link that we've seen, which is physical, between interventions that were done on the humanitarian front and then the uptake of those same interventions within the development realm. I'll give you an example, and I know Aristide and the team would also provide more. We were able to distribute goats as part of the restocking exercise under the humanitarian program. And the same goals that were provided to vulnerable communities that were identified have allowed the communities then to be able to develop groups around how they can be able to keep on the production of the livestock, how they can be able to get dairy out of that, how they can be able to link up with the women's nutrition groups so that they can be able to actually provide, diversity in terms of their dietary intakes. So there is a link that the communities are seeing, and this link has also strengthened the footprint of WHH in our intervention areas. We feel very much confident that we are realizing durable and sustainable structures that will be able to help communities to be able to respond to the crisis as they come. Thank you. Next slide, please. In terms of lessons learned, based on the same idea, for us, they are around issues to do with networking with the state actors. We have identified it as a challenge. We feel that it's an opportunity. State actors would need to be informed about the activities that we're doing, and particularly within the framework of Nexus. So we're not talking about projects that are running over just a 6-month period, but we're talking about projects that will be running over 24 months, projects that are running over 36 months, which have defined roles where local authorities would need, together with local leadership, will need to take up work plans so that they can be able to develop sustainable roadmaps. They can be able to develop sustainable solutions for the local communities. We have also been looking at the idea of saying we need to discuss more regarding the integration of Nexus approaches at the national level, because this is key for us in defining strategy. It's key also in fundraising, and it's key also in advocacy particularly for the Niger. The funding streams that we have mentioned, the 2 funding streams, would be elements that would need to be duplicated at least with other funding streams so that there is continuity, and then we can be able to send key advocacy messages and results to the local communities and the national actors as well. Chris, if you can move on to the advocacy messages. So around this as well, in conclusion, what we're saying then is that our advocacy is around the promotion of locally led and resilient food systems. The more communities are involved in defining their food systems, in participating actively in their food systems, the more they will own the process and the more it will run again in the long term. The message that we would want also to recommend would be an increase, the same as we mentioned before. We need to increase the financing of Nexus projects, particularly now in the Sahel, because there are enormous challenges. We've talked about security, we've talked about the effects of climate change, we've talked about the pressure on natural resources because of the movement, population movement. And what we need to do as well is to ensure that the protection component is engendered within our programming. So we need to prioritize the protection of civilians. We need to also ensure that there is access, particularly for humanitarian and development actors, to areas that are most in need. The situation that we're finding right now, where we cannot access particular communities because of the current situation, is unfortunate, and which will only increase the vulnerability of the communities that we're serving. And then last but not least, what we need to do also is to recommend that there is a strengthening of the technical and financial capacities of state services, as well as civil society organizations who we feel have a very important role that they need to play in the success of the Nexus projects. So in brief, Chris, thank you very much for this opportunity. Looking very much forward to the discussion in the groups, where effectively we can also talk more about the examples that we have. I have colleagues who are also in the meeting who will definitely be happy to contribute to the discussion and provide more information. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks very much, Jamison. Fantastic. So we will break out into the two breakout groups now. We'll have a bit of an overview of how that will work from Juan, so I'll hand over to Juan.
Hi everyone. So yes, as you can see in the slides on the screen, to open the breakout rooms, you will see at the bottom of your screen, you will see the icon to enter the breakout rooms. And once you click on it, you can then choose the breakout room that you would like to join. So then, as you can see in the second image in the slide, then you can choose between the room 1, which is for Ethiopia, and the second room, which will be for the project in Niger.
So I think, Caterina, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Chris. And apologies, I have to say that in my group, the discussion was abruptly interrupted by the closure of the room. I'm very sorry. This is what happens in these online spaces. But what I recommended in our room, and I will repeat it here, if there were questions that were not answered, you are welcome to write them in the chat, and we will kindly ask the speakers to respond to them later on, so that we are sure that that your curiosities are responded, and also you are able to continue the conversation even after this session. So I know that our speakers have been very vocal, and we would like to ask them to continue being so by giving us a quick overview of what was the discussion in the room, what questions came out, if you can shortly summarize them for the rest of the participants. So let me see if there's any volunteer who wants to start. Jameson, would you like to start this time?
Thank you, with pleasure. So our group was very, very animated. I loved the session. Looking forward to continue again, the discussions afterwards. We were looking, so our discussion was quite interesting. We're looking at the issues of localization that we discussed, and in terms of how that means for the Nexus. We talked about also the circumstances, the framework that we currently have, given the circumstances in Niger, whether it would be possible effectively to actually do the implementation of carry out an implementation of the Nexus program, given the circumstances that we're in. Very interesting how we talked about how that, it's an advocacy issue Certainly, it's a tough discussion around, what we need to do as a solution. But we're looking forward that, with opportunities and avenues that are there, we can carry out the message, bring out the message that the Nexus is important. We need to fund the Nexus approach, given the circumstances that we're finding. There were discussions as well regarding, the support for the technical service personnel. How do we support the state structure so that they can be, apart from just giving the funds, we are able to give them, more support in terms of elements that are more in the long term. How can our approaches be sustainable? What I found also interesting were questions around how to link the Nexus to elements to do with markets. How do we able also to talk about the cash-based systems within the framework of the Nexus? So very interesting topics. I think what we need to do definitely is to have this discussion ongoing. We have also concrete examples that are coming from our colleagues who have been working on the project on ground. I take the opportunity to mention Aristide, the head of project, as well as Jadi, who's our coordinator in the field, who are also present. They'll be much more willing to provide concrete examples of what we've been able to do. But thanks a lot for this passion, for the opportunity here.
Thank you so much also for being concise and allowing us to have enough time also to hear from Meron.
Thank you, Caterina. Well, we also had a very amazing discussion with our team. Of course, there was interest to dive into the details during the discussion, which was also good, which shows the interest to know more about the approach that we are promoting. So in general, there were discussions about the role, the engagement of the private sector, what was the challenge and how we try to address that. And also regarding the community-led the crisis group, in terms of the membership, the sustainability aspect was also discussed. And since we focus in the project regarding early warning system and response, there was also interest to know more like about carbon financing, what is the plan if the community can also raise funds so that in the future they respond to needs. This is also something that we will look into, but the situation in the ground doesn't allow us because we still have to regenerate, rehabilitate the area. So in general, it was a very interesting discussion. And one last point is the Nexus approach, how we laid the peace component in. How was the process? And it was a very difficult question to answer. So very interesting. And the advocacy, the subnational, national level, and also the engagement in the food systems discussion was also a key takeaway for us, which is something that we will build on and collaborate as Alliance and engage in the upcoming positionings or discussions. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much to both speakers, to Chris and to everyone who participated to the conversation. It seems that both rooms had very lively discussions, and it was good that you had the chance to delve a bit more in depth into what into the topics that were presented. We heard we heard two cases which had also certain similarities in terms of complex crisis, working in volatile areas, hard to reach communities, and an evolving situation for which adaptation was needed along the course of the implementation. We heard the example in Ethiopia of where an integrated approach that contributes or aligns to the higher level national food system transformation pathway provides a significant added value. We heard also how important it is to engage different stakeholders. From the case of Ethiopia, we heard not only the involvement of community-led crisis response as a key factor for the success and for the implementation of both the humanitarian and the peace element. And we also heard how important it is to have private sector stakeholders involved in the processes. This is not new, but it's important to restate it, how important it is to have flexible and long-term approaches in programming. We've heard from Meron how important was the second phase approval for this project to continue and to continue delivering on the objectives that it had put forward. What else? Meron couldn't stress more how important it is to embed crisis modifiers in the program design as key element for flexibility and to adapt to evolving context. We heard from Niger a case where two funding streams came together from two institutional donors to interlink approaches and to deliver both on humanitarian needs and longer-term programming and responding to longer-term resilience outputs. We heard also the necessity of strengthening capacity of both local partners, state services throughout the lifetime of the project to ensure sustainability in the long term, and including early warning and anticipatory action. What else we heard? We heard that there are some challenges, but we also heard about the successes, and we heard how certain of these cases, of these presentation of elements of the presentations we heard can be further carried forward. I heard in my room that some colleagues from different countries were ready to hear how we engage the local actors and to also be inspired for their own programming. So this was also the purpose of today, to make sure that you had the chance to hear from the others and cross inspire for your own programming. And another element that we've been hearing consistently is how important it is to keep doing advocacy and bringing field evidence so that funding instruments align as needed to changing context and they embed the necessary flexibility. So I hope that with these few notes, I have summarized a bit the discussion, although for sure this is not, this may not be exhaustive of the full conversation. As it is our standard practice, we will disseminate an email with key takeaways. You will also be able to, for those who were not present, and if you want to listen in to this session, we will also circulate a recording. So if anyone missed a chance or joined later, you can catch up later. And another important thing is that we would like to hear from you how you experienced this session, what suggestions you have to improve it, what you liked. So please, you see in the chat that Juan has just shared a link to an evaluation. So please take some time, not more than 3 minutes. It will take very short to respond to that. And with this, I remember the chance you have to write down your questions if you have more, so that our speakers can respond to you at a later stage. And finally, we hope that you enjoyed this exchange. And we hope that you will also join the next one, the next and final session about Nexus, that will happen on the 11th of December and will be about Nexus application on civil society partnership. And finally, let me thank all the speakers for their great preparation, the time that they have spent with us. Let me also thank Chris, who co-hosted with me this session. A special thank also to Blanca Roberts from Malawi, who was meant to be with us today, but unfortunately she had the last minute impediment. She was the other co-host. And thank you everyone for joining. And hope to see you soon at the next event. Bye.
Thanks to you too,
Bye,
Caterina.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks.
bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye. So the speakers, can we stay online?